talks from the crypt.
And I thought, yep, that's all I need to hear. Yeah, we're going to California.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the character of Chop Top stuck with you for a while. You know, you talk about how when you got cast into House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob had to pry your hands off of that character.
Yeah.
Which almost makes me wonder, number one, how did he do that? And, you know, like, what was the context? Like, how attached to the character you were? And what would the original, like, what would your iteration of Otis, what would that have looked like?
Well, it would have been kind of, I thought Rob had wanted like a Chop Top or like a reheated Chop Top.
Same kind of crackly voice, hunched over.
Yeah, the whole thing. And it was funny because, as I like to demonstrate sometimes, Chop Top was really, the energy was all in the kind of hunched in the shoulders. It was, you know, scratching the plate. It was like, hey, lick my plate, you know, and doing all that stuff. Whereas Otis is more like a, you know, a fuck you cowboy, big balls, you know, thumbs under the belt buckle, you know, like fuck you.
I've heard you said it was all in the balls.
All in the balls. And so I, you know, thank God that Rob, you know, pried my hands off Chop Top and encouraged me to go from the shoulders down to the balls and, you know, play Otis that way.
And so that must have like just really evolved your skill as an actor just in general.
Well, what it evolved was my self-image. You know, I thought of myself more as Chop Top, you know, hunched over, scratching my plate, you know, being skitchy and gitchy and geechy. And Rob saw Otis in me, and before I did. I mean, I didn't even realize, you know, and it, you know, when you look at Otis from House of a Thousand Corpses, it's, you know, I'm not quite the fuck you cowboy that I am in Devil's Rejects. Still, you know, kind of crazy, you know, up in the in my gallery. You know, I've got a total block. I'm trying to, you know, get some, you know, get some juice flowing, and you know, and finally, you know, thanks to Rainn Wilson and Fish Boy, you know, I finally, you know, I'm starting to come out of my artist block. I remember when I came over to Rob's house, we were watching the Super Bowl. I think it was 2005, so January. And that was when Rob said, you know, we're going to do another one. Mm-hmm. This was after House was a success. And that was when he wanted me to grow a beard. I asked him to, you know, sketch that out on a paper plate. We were eating Fritos and potato chips watching the Super Bowl. And so he pulled out a paper plate and wrote, you know, drew this picture of his idea of Otis for Devil's Rejects. And and of course I had him sign it. So I've got my paper plate. I don't even know where it is. It's somewhere. Yeah. I hope my wife hasn't thrown it out. But anyway, so that was, I got a little more, you know, when I got Otis in Devil's Rejects, you know, I always like to say that, you know, with Otis in House of a Thousand Corpses, it was more like, you know, going to the dealer to buy a car, you know, kind of kicking the tires, looking under the hood with Otis. And then with Devil's Rejects, like I bought the car and now I'm taking it out for a spin.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
Was that your first time filming on the Universal backlot for House?
Yeah, absolutely.
How was that? That must have been amazing.
Well, it was, you know, it was convenient because, you know, I live right in town. So it was like a pretty convenient commute. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, we were right down the street from, you know, the Psycho house on the backlot of Universal. And also we shot, the House of a Thousand Corpses was actually the chicken ranch from Best Little Whorehouse in Texas with Sly Stallone and Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
And so we were occupying that house. That's where we shot the movie.
Which now gets an honorary mention on the tour at Universal Studios.
Yes. And it was so fun to, you know, to come out every once in a while covered with blood and maybe Mr. Willis's skin. And, you know, and there's a tram of tourists going by, and the tourist, you know, the guide going, you know, and on your right, there the Rob Zombie movie, House of a Thousand Corpses. And we'd wave all covered with blood and gore, and people would be a little nervous, and that would be during the day. So
Yeah.
it was like pretty scary.
That's incredible. That was one of the questions I had, is if you guys ever, messed with anybody on those trams.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I read you guys came out with a vinyl of all three of the soundtracks, and inside there's a little fold out, and Rob says that if you listen closely at a certain part in House of a Thousand Corpses, you could hear the Jaws ride going off. Can you confirm?
I can't, because I'm not that sensitive, but it was just down the hill.
I've never,
Yep.
I couldn't find it. I couldn't listen to
Yep.
it. I wondered what the challenges were, because I heard that it was a bit challenging. You guys had to redo a lot of the audio. Mm-hmm. Was it just because it was too loud because of the theme park, all the trams rolling by?
That I don't know either.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But kind of like Texas Chainsaw 2, House of a Thousand Corpses wasn't initially received very well by the studios. I think when you guys finished that movie, they were like, hey, we're not even able to do this.
Yes. Well, that was back in the days of 9/11. It was back in the days when there was a congressional hearing about studios selling R-rated movies to underage kids.
There was Columbine as well, right?
Yeah. There was Columbine. There was a lot going on where, the general, zeitgeist of America was against a good old fashioned horror movie, and so Universal actually dropped us. So we shot that in 2000. It came out. It was ready for distribution in 2000, and Universal dropped us because it was, I don't know, too scary, or there was the one scene I remember, the scene where I'm about to shoot the deputy, Walton Goggins, down on his knees, and there's like 30 seconds of silence as the camera crane dollies back up, and I'm just holding the gun on poor Walton Goggins, and then after 30 seconds of silence, there's a little pop, and Walton slow motion falls over, and I remember when Rob showed me that scene while we were still shooting the movie, and he and I thought the scene was amazing. I still do, of course. And but what he said was that Universal wanted that cut from the movie because they felt it was glorifying violence against the police or something. And Rob, God bless Rob, he loves to take on the suits, and Rob was like, no, that's staying in the movie. And he fought hard for it, and of course, it did stay in the movie.
Well, that's what makes the best directors the best. Tarantino is very similar in that way.
Yeah,
it's like, we're going to do it my way, or you guys are going to not do this movie at all.
Yeah, and it was Rob's first movie. There were so many different problems. I mean, he overcame a mountain of stuff.
And how are you feeling in this moment? Are you like, holy shit, my big break on this film is done?
Not really. I just don't have that kind of imagination or expectations. I mean, I would probably more now because I've been around showbiz for a while. But back then, I didn't know.
You're just happy to be there.
Just happy to be there. Exactly. Yeah. Just happy to be there. And so for 3 years, we wandered in the wilderness, and finally, in 2003, we got picked up by Lionsgate, and they put us out. I think it was 800 theaters, whatever the initial rollout was, and it was huge. It was huge because people had been wanting to see House of a Thousand Corpses since 2000, because that was back in the days of video cassettes, and so many of the video cassettes would have previews of coming movies, and the House of a Thousand Corpses preview on the video cassettes was very cool. It was misleading because it showed a bunch of guys in hazmat suits in a weird graveyard at night with a bunch of mist, and House of a Thousand Corpses, and everybody's like, oh man, I can't wait to see that. Rob Zombie, that's going to be cool. And it never came out. So there was that, and that probably created some kind of mythology or certainly an expectation. So when it finally did come out, like everybody was like, running to the theaters. And we, I think, I remember Sid using this fact. I'm not sure exactly, but apparently opening weekend, we made back our budget. So we already, we were like in profit, as it were, after that opening weekend. And so Lionsgate had taken a gamble on it and had won big. And that's what, of course, launched Devil's Rejects.
Yeah.
They were ready for a sequel.
Which some people look at Devil's Rejects almost as kind of like a do-over of House of a Thousand Corpses, because it kind of gets, House gets a little bit of a bad rap, especially with the whole Dr. Satan narrative and how that didn't carry through to Devil's Rejects. Mm-hmm. Did you agree with that choice, or were you kind of, you didn't care?
I didn't really care. Again, that wasn't really anything I was particularly concerned about. Yeah. Rob apparently wanted to keep the thing gritty and real, and Dr. Satan looked a little unreal. Also, there was a scene, I think, where Tiny speaks, and I think he wanted to delete that too. So he basically made sure he pared it down to, the gritty, groovy Devil's Rejects that appeared on the big screen.
And so that also explains why you look a bit different in that movie as well.
And it's kind of funny how that's when I thought Rob was really not just a good filmmaker, but a genius, because he took the opportunity. Usually in horror films, like if you make a sequel, it's because the original was made a bunch of money, and then you want it. The sequel basically a lot of times is kind of a rehash of the first one, just trying to draw in that same crowd. But with Devil's Rejects, it was like a completely different movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses is an old dark house, classic horror movie structure. Kids break down, go into the house, and they get tortured and killed, and maybe one or two escape, maybe not. But Devil's Rejects was a violent crime road picture. And it's so funny because in Devil's Rejects, Baby doesn't do her laugh. Maybe she does it once. Mm. She's not going, whatever that particular baby laugh is that I can't do.
Pretty good one, though.
And then, Sid is out of, the clown makeup for pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah. And
Otis goes from an albino to a bearded Allman Brother.
Yeah, or Manson.
Yeah, and so again the whole paradigm shifts from old dark house to violent road picture.
Yeah, get out of the old dark house.
Yeah, get out of the old dark house.
Yeah,
out to the Kahiki Palms Motel.
Yeah,
out to Lancaster. Yeah,
which that scene includes probably one of the most difficult scenes to watch in that movie. You and Priscilla Barnes, even as a trained actor, I'm sure that was fairly difficult. How well did you and Priscilla know each other when you guys were filming that scene?
We didn't know each other that well. Priscilla was really a great actor and very game for the scene. Sometimes, in a scene like that, understandably, a lot of people would be reluctant to do the scene. They would, and I was reluctant to do the scene myself.
When you first read the screenplay, or it took up until the day of shooting?
It's so funny because when I first read the screenplay and I saw that scene,